What if I told you there was once a boy who had nothing, who then trained to be a soldier, and then that soldier became a king? This is exactly what happened in Pau, France, 1763. Out of this unremarkable corner of the world emerged a man who was anything but ordinary. Jean-Baptiste Bernadotte started his life with nothing but a pair of boots and a load of ambition, but somehow ended up with a crown on his head. A soldier turned king sounds like the sort of plot Hollywood would cook up, but this was real life. If you've ever thought your life's taken some wild turns, just wait till you hear this one. Grab a cuppa and relax on your throne, because I'm taking you on the story of the soldier who swapped muskets for monarchy. Jean-Baptiste didn't grow up with dreams of palaces or political power. His family was about as common as it got. A dad who worked as a prosecutor and a mum who kept the house running. Life wasn't glamorous, but it was honest. Then his dad died, leaving the family skint. At 17, Bernadotte did what any lad with no prospects might do. He joined the army. Back then, that wasn't a cushy career move. You weren't getting 3 square meals and a nice barracks. You were lucky if you had boots that didn't fall apart halfway through a march. It was all mud, muskets, and a lot of shouting from officers who probably didn't know their left from their right. Most soldiers stayed soldiers, but not Jean-Baptiste. Turns out, he had a knack for leadership. He climbed the ranks faster than a drunk bloke scrambling up a pub table to sing karaoke. By the time the French Revolution kicked off, he was a general, leading armies across Europe like he'd been doing it since birth. One of his standout moments came during the Italian campaign. Napoleon was doing his thing, conquering cities and posing dramatically for paintings, while Bernadotte was busy making sure the troops didn't keel over from exhaustion. He wasn't just a desk general though. This was a man who led from the front, musket in hand, yelling "follow me" rather than "you lot, go die over there." Now, you can't talk about Bernadotte without mentioning Napoleon. These two were like chalk and cheese. If the chalk sometimes tried to take over the world and the cheese had a thing for justice and equality. Napoleon saw Bernadotte as both an asset and a headache. Jean-Baptiste wasn't afraid to stand up to the big man, which earned him both respect and a permanent spot on Napoleon's people who might try to betray me list. He was a bit like that one mate who's always got your back but isn't afraid to call you out when you're being a knob. Here's where the story takes a turn, so sharp it could give you whiplash. In 1810, the Swedish Parliament was on the hunt for a new heir to the throne. Their current king, Charles XIII, was knocking on death's door, and they needed someone who could steady the ship. Out of nowhere they picked Bernadotte. Why? Apparently, they liked his military record and thought he'd bring some much needed stability. Plus, he'd shown kindness to Swedish prisoners during a campaign, and they reckoned that was kingly enough. Imagine being told, "Congrats mate, you're going to be a king," when all you wanted was a quiet retirement. Moving to Sweden wasn't exactly a smooth transition. For starters, Bernadotte didn't speak a word of Swedish. Can you imagine turning up to a royal court and not even knowing how to say hello? But he wasn't fazed. He threw himself into learning the language, the culture and the politics, proving that you're never too old to pick up a new hobby or a new country. What really won the Swedes over was his work ethic. He wasn't lounging around in silk robes, he was grafting, trying to modernise the army and sort out the country's finances. He even kept his military boots handy just in case. As King Charles XIV, John Bernadotte ruled for over 20 years, leaving a legacy that shaped Sweden's future. He kept the country out of wars, stabilised the economy, and even managed to smooth things over with Norway, which was not a small feat. And through it all, he never forgot where he came from. He was the king who still fought like a soldier, always prepared for battle, but just as ready to fight for peace. One of the most infamous stories about Bernadotte is tied to a tattoo reportedly inked on his chest. It allegedly read, "Mort au roi," or "Death to Kings." Now, if you're wondering why a bloke who went on to become a king would have such a statement permanently etched into his skin, you're not alone. It's a detail that sounds more like a setup to a bad punchline an actual historical fact. The story goes that Bernadotte got the tattoo during his fiery revolutionary days, when he was all about liberty, equality and fraternity, the catchphrases of the French Revolution. Back then, death to kings wasn't exactly a controversial sentiment among revolutionaries, but when you're later crowned King of Sweden, well, it becomes a bit awkward, doesn't it? Here's where things get murky. Historians debate whether the tattoo actually existed. Some accounts say yes, Bernadotte sported the rebellious ink, while others argue it's just a juicy myth. If it exists, it's likely he kept it well hidden during his royal years. Can you imagine him shirtless at a royal portrait sitting? Oh, don't mind that, it's just a motivational quote. Real or not, the story of the tattoo has become a part of Bernadotte's legend. It's one of those details that captures the contradictions of his life. A man who started as a revolutionary and ended up as a monarch. Whether he bore those words on his skin or not, they certainly remained etched into the history books. So what do you think? A soldier's rise to the throne might sound like a fairy tale, but Bernadotte's story is as real as it gets. From the mud of the battlefield to the gilded halls of a palace, he proved that with enough grit and a bit of luck, you can achieve the unthinkable. Let me know what you thought in the comments, and I'll see you in the next one. Just remember, next time someone underestimates you, channel your inner Bernadotte. You never know where life might take you.